Now, I'm going to transition and introduce a very special person who's going to be moderating the Future of Energy panel. It's actually my husband, Einstein Ntim, who is the co-founder of the company behind the Haiti Tech Summit. So please give a round of applause to Einstein Ntim.
Thank you very much, Christine. Are you guys having fun today? I know it's been a slow start, but let's get things moving forward. I'm going to announce my great panelists into the audience stage, and we have his staff, Sheehan, here. Could you kindly have a seat, please? James Ellsmoor, Andrew Yakub, and Sergio Valkenburg, please. Please join me. Fantastic. For some time, I worked for an industrial automation firm in China, and we were selling automation equipment. And this firm built this hydrovoltaic power plant. What that is it's a solar power plant whereby the energy, as the sun rays, is mirrored through to a water plant, and the water is literally evaporated, and the water is sent to turbines to make it generate new power. And I recognize, wow, that's the future when it comes to solar energy. So for you and the panel, what are your thoughts on the future trends when it comes to energy? Starting with Van.
I'm sorry, I'm more with wind energy, so I think I pass it through my colleagues of the solar.
No, I mean just like it made me realize that solar was going to play a big role into it, but that energy overall is going to change drastically in the future. So just on the energy sector, what are some of the trends you see coming forward?
I mean, trends, but also we will see is the wind energy, of course, and the evolution in the wind energy, where first we're focusing on land energy, but offshore wind energy produce much more wind, and also the turbines are getting bigger and bigger. So to empathize on that, on those possibilities, and create direct lines to the land, create big options for green energy directly, and save a lot on emissions.
Great, thank you. How about you?
Yeah, so I think we're actually at the shifting point right now in civilization for a change in energy, the main energy source of society. It happened a couple times throughout history. It went from manpower to animal power. It went from animal power to coal power, and then coal power to oil. So right now we're going from oil, an oil-based energy system, to renewable-based. And now that renewables are cheaper than fossil fuels, it's going to really take off over the next 50 years. And it's actually very helpful to countries that are developing, because you don't need a grid for renewable energy. And a grid costs about $1 million a mile.
Thank you very much. You guys want to chip in at all?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to emphasize what Andrew just said is, I mean, how many people in Haiti here have been inconvenienced at some point by the lack of grid reliability or access to grid energy? Just show of hands. Okay, so I think that tells you what's important.
True.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on that I think the grid model is really going to be outdated. It already is in many places, and you look at places like Jamaica, a lot of big buyers of energy are coming off the grid. The University of the West Indies in Kingston has said that they can actually generate their own electricity cheaper than the grid can, and I think that's going to be a huge issue for the Caribbean islands in the future. But solar is probably the biggest, and I would say that's my business, but solar is the biggest answer, I think, for the Caribbean to solve that problem. And as storage comes ever cheaper, it's already, in the Caribbean, a lot of islands pay 4 times the price per unit of electricity than America. So storage is already cheap enough, and it's only going to get cheaper in the next few years.
Fantastic. I think when it comes to energy, people always, when we talk about innovation, people always draw back to solar, but I'm pretty sure there's different aspects of renewable energy that we can delve into. What are your thoughts on other sort of mediums of energy that we can actually leverage when it comes to innovation for the future? Other types of energy, whether it's wind, and the like. You got any thoughts on that?
Maybe I come back, what we have developed in the Netherlands.
Yep.
Was the biggest offshore wind farm in the world. A great 600 kilo colleague isn't there, megawatt a year, supplying 1.5 million people a year green energy. And people say, okay, that's done in the Netherlands, but I think if you connect that in the Caribbean and work on cooperation with Caribbean countries like Jamaica, Haiti, and Dominican together, also develop those kind of projects here in the Caribbean, because what's possible there is also possible here. They're just connecting the dots and connecting the countries and strengthening each other.
Thank you. It's funny because when it comes to fossil fuels, right, we know it's damaging the planet for those who believe in climate change, but yet still we rely upon it. That means there's certain limitations when it comes to other forms of renewable energy. So does anyone want to pitch in as to what some of those limitations are when it comes to, you know, solar, wind, and the like at all?
Yeah, so I think in the developing world, especially in the Caribbean, there's a source of energy that is yet to be untapped, and that's biofuel. Right? They have a lot of biofuel in Brazil, but it hasn't yet taken off in the Caribbean. So all of the actual sugarcane waste goes to waste, but that could be turned into a carbon neutral source of fuel.
And another thing to add is that I think everyone knows that the sun goes down at night and that the wind is not always blowing. And so being able to store the energy that comes from solar panels or that comes from wind turbines is incredibly critical. And that's probably the biggest hurdle to being able to that, and you know, the high initial capital cost of solar are probably the two biggest hurdles to their implementation in places like Haiti and around the Caribbean.
Fantastic. Do you have any thoughts on that, to limitations of other forms of energy that's made fossil fuels still be the predominant source of energy right now?
Well, I think in the Caribbean, a lot of people talk about wave and tidal energy, and that does have some potential. But where wave and tidal energy really has potential is in places like Scotland, Norway, and I think what I like about solar for the Caribbean is that it's already a proven technology. It doesn't have moving parts, and so it's less likely to fail. I mean, wind is going to be huge as well, but solar, if we're talking about remote villages in Haiti where there may not be the expertise to keep maintenance of products, solar is probably the best there because it's much more simple, and the panels will keep going without as much maintenance as some other technologies might need. Things like wind and wave are great for the large scale, but solar can really come in on that local level.
You made a great point about the storage when it comes to energy, right? I know that Elon Musk announced that he releasing a new form of lithium sort of energy storage port, right? So what can we as people or individuals do to try to contribute to the actual positive future when it comes to energy and renewable energy at all? Anyone have any thoughts on that? What we can personally do?
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows Elon Musk, and I wish I had the marketing ability of Elon Musk just to be able to send a tweet and get in the New York Times and all over the world. But, you know, the solar rooftops will be a great product, but they're still really expensive. And I think what I want to reiterate is that for wind, for solar, the technology is already there. It's at a point where we should be deploying it a lot more. And a lot of people saying, oh, we should wait for the solar rooftops. You can keep looking in the future, and of course things are always going to improve, but I think people need to realize that the technology is there now for us to implement, and a lot of it is about education.
Agree.
And I want to add to that I mean, on the individual level, what you can do is to, you know, try to adopt maybe smaller solar powered products so that, you know, to just almost train yourself and, you know, show that it can be used by someone. See if that's something that, you know, you're individually comfortable with, like having a solar phone charger or something like that. So that's on the consumer side, that's a consumer behavior that could help, you know, overall market adoption of localized personal solar.
Oh, great. I mean, the question was about what we can personally do in our individual lives to improve the growth of renewable energy. So what are your thoughts on that at all?
Yeah, so I think just individually, the best thing that you could do to help it is to get something solar powered or something renewable powered and show it off, like brag about it to your friends, and that actually helps with the notion of it and helps the culture spread.
Yeah, maybe also that, with wind, of course, you have a lot of capital needed to implement projects like this, but then you do what you can do on an individual base. If I look to Haiti and see Haitian overbroad sending $3 billion back to Haiti, in the project what's done in other parts of the world, there's connection of the supplier of the contractor. They became all investors of the projects. Why we cannot engage an investment fund to invest in renewable energies like solar or wind energy and get engagement of the Haitians also overbroad to invest in those kind of projects. Individual base, but come together in a collective good.
Fantastic. Okay, great. You.
I just want to add on that. I think the cultural element is huge. There was a study at Yale University a few years ago that said the biggest influencer of whether someone installs solar on their roof is not their political ideology, it's not even income, it's whether their next door neighbor does it first. And I think that says a lot about the way that humans adopt new technology and the way that we think about things. The work that we do in our organization is about getting solar on the most visible buildings possible. We're installing solar on the official offices of the Jamaican Prime Minister as effectively a publicity stunt, but it gets people talking about it and it gets it on the front page of the news. So I think that media element and visibility is a big thing that we can all do.
And just kind of even deeper, you all work in the energy sector. Can you share a bit about your own personal experiences and the lessons that you've learned being in the energy sector, and what, for people who are looking to get involved into that same industry, what they can do about that too? Just like your own personal experiences and lessons you've learned.
Well, I guess just from a survey of the four of us here, we have wind, kind of industrial solar, NGO solar, and energy storage. So I'm agnostic as to where the power comes from, as long as one of these three guys gives it to me. But you don't need to have a lot of technical background to try to do something that could improve renewable energy utilization in your in the world, or if you're trying to get into the industry. I think the biggest hurdle that people run into a lot of times is just gaining traction. And so, I mean, really having a lot of friends and having a strong network is also really important to, from my experience at least. These guys might have something different to say about that.
Excellent, thank you.
In terms of jobs in solar and renewables more broadly, you don't need a technical background. I have a geography degree, I have no technical background, and now I'm running an organization about renewable energy. So obviously we need engineers, we need technical people, but there are a lot of really important jobs out there in renewables for people without this technical backgrounds. And renewables now are providing, and storage as well, are providing hundreds of thousands of jobs millions of jobs across the world, and that sector is only going to improve. So any knowledge that you have in that sector can really be used in a broad range of areas.
Thank you.
And so I think one of the things to look for when you look for jobs in renewable energy is just kind of see the parallels that what's happening, the trends in the industry, because it's changing so rapidly, but it's all mirroring what's happened in the past. So for example, in solar, you need financing. And so if you have a background in finance, but you've never done anything at all with solar, you can actually go into solar. I saw a lot of people from the mortgage industry go into solar installations, home installations, because they use that same sales model that they had for the mortgages, and they use that for door-to-door sales of residential installations. So that's one way to look at it, is that you just have to look at the trends in the industry and see where previous fields can be applied.
So it's sort of like bringing other industries into it and just trying a different approach to it.
Yeah, I think, bringing other industries, other previous business models, and seeing how they can fit into renewables. It's changing so fast.
Okay, thank you. Any thoughts on your personal experience working in the energy sector and lessons you can give to other people who are looking to do the same thing?
First of all, it's on a higher level, but it's a common good. It's for the people itself. If you have more people have electricity, you can create more ecosystems itself also. So if you get more people engaged and make a collective good, like an investment fund in energy itself, from Haiti abroad there, it can be benefit for the development of Haiti itself and the whole surrounding in the Caribbean. What we have learned during the time, of course, we understand that because of wind energy, bird species disappeared. So we had to adapt also to move to offshore, and there's more wind also to capture. Also to understand not to disturb the environment in the waters, we're creating different ships with sound systems, so to create distraction of the sea life, not to interfere too much with them. So there's a lot of technical.
For me, when I was working at that firm, my biggest frustration was realizing how big the traditional models are entrenched right now. So when you talk about, petrochemicals and hydrocarbons and the like, I just slightly kind of gave up a little bit. What makes you guys optimistic about the future of energy in a positive light as we bring this to a close?
I mean, there's huge opportunities worldwide and particularly in the Caribbean. And I think those of you that live in the Caribbean or work here have a real potential to lead and be innovative in how we pursue greater use of renewables. Part of that is because the electricity costs are so high already. Part of it is that you have these reliability issues. So there's much more incentive here to lead in that innovation. And so from a Caribbean, in the Caribbean context, I'm really excited that this region has so many opportunities. There's also the climate change element comes into it as well, that this region is very vulnerable to climate change. And so if you all are setting an example of how we can find solutions for that, then that sends a fantastic political message, particularly when we have not so great leaders on climate change to the north.
I think just in terms of motivation to adopt for like people to work in it and to kind of make sure you can wake up every day and continue doing your job and not lose hope, is there are a lot of pretty big success stories for renewable energy. I mean, just at least personally, a lot of the youngest, highest net worth individuals that I know are people that were in solar photovoltaics. There's a lot of opportunity to innovate there, and I think especially in this region, in this latitude, because if there's one thing that you have a ton of here in Haiti, it's sunlight.
A lot of sunlight, that's true. Thank you. Any final thoughts on that?
Another good thing about Haiti is that it rains a lot. So the worst thing for solar PV is dust, but it just washes off every other day here.
Great stuff.
So, okay, so what motivates me is every time the price of gas goes up, I get motivated. And it's just going to continue to rise. The cost of fossil fuels will inherently go up because the supply goes down as we use it. So it's just going to be the main theme, I think, over the next 30 years is us transitioning to renewables.
Fantastic. Any final thoughts on what makes you optimistic about the future of energy?
I mean, the sad thing is that the population is rising, but with it, we are facing much more issues with the rising population and health issues. So we're acting more regarding green energy solutions, and that's why people are reacting to it. Even if you look to Haiti, then to solar, I see companies now assembling solar panels and all those things around it. So it's amazing to see that.
Well, thank you all very much. Really appreciate your time and the information you share with all of us. Thank you. A round of applause for the panelists.